Chris Williams was no ordinary young man, though the world thought otherwise. To everyone he was just a poor waiter, a nobody with no future. But what no one knew was that Chris was the only son and heir to the powerful Williams family, the richest dynasty in the city. He hid his identity, determined to build his own path and prove himself through hard work. And in the middle of this double life he fell in love. Gloria was his heart, his dream, the one person he believed would stand by him. But her father despised him. Her brother mocked and humiliated him. And when the Johnson family stepped in with wealth and promises, Gloria chose them. At her welcome party, before the eyes of all, Chris's love shattered. She kissed another man, leaving him broken and humiliated. But Chris didn't collapse. In the shadows he worked. He sacrificed, he built, he endured. With the support of his loyal sisters, he turned pain into strength, creating his own company and empire. And when the time came at his father's grand gala, the truth was revealed. Chris was the heir of the Williams fortune. The very families that mocked him were cast down, and the world bowed before him. This is a story of betrayal, sacrifice, resilience, and the sweet triumph of truth. Hey family, waving hand. Before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now let's begin the story. The morning sun stretched across the horizon of the city, throwing golden light on towers of glass and steel. Beneath those towers, in the quiet corner of a modest apartment, a young man sat by the window with a cup of coffee cooling in his hand. Chris Williams was 27 years old, the only son and heir of the Williams empire, the wealthiest family in the city, a dynasty of power, medicine, and wealth known across the nation. Yet in this small, bare apartment, no one would have guessed his true identity. His hair was slightly tousled, his shirt rolled up at the sleeves, and his face carried the look of someone who had lived two lives at once. One in the shadows, another in silence. Chris had chosen this life of obscurity. He had grown up surrounded by affluence, marble halls, fleets of cars, and the reverence of servants who bowed at the mention of his family name. But to him those things had felt like golden chains. He wanted something more, something built with his own hands. He wanted the taste of sweat-earned bread, the satisfaction of forging an empire, not because he was Chris Williams, son of the great Williams patriarch, but because he was Chris, a man of ideas, dreams, and determination. That was why he worked odd jobs, waiting tables at restaurants, delivering parcels across the city, even cleaning at night shifts. The city's elite would have laughed if they knew the heir to a billion-dollar pharmaceutical empire was carrying trays for minimum wage. But Chris didn't care. He wanted to learn life from the ground up. And more than that, he wanted to know if love could be real, if someone could choose him without the Williams name. He wasn't entirely alone in this hidden journey. His sisters, though different in personalities, had always been his anchor. Anna, the eldest at 35, was a doctor of international renown. Elegant and sharp, she commanded every room she entered. She carried the weight of the family with grace and often scolded Chris for hiding away from the limelight. Yet beneath her stern tone was a heart that loved fiercely. She saw him not just as a brother but as a man with a destiny. Miriam, 33, was ambitious, fiery, and relentless in business. She was the strategist of the siblings, the one who could dismantle a company with a few words or build one with a single idea. She adored Chris, but like Easter, she couldn't understand why he preferred obscurity when the throne of Williams awaited him. Grace, the youngest, was the gentlest soul of all, sweet, innocent, and loyal. Unlike her elder sisters, she never pushed Chris to be anything other than himself. She believed in his dream, in his desire to build something of his own, and often covered for him when the family asked questions. Grace was his confidant, the one who reminded him that even in shadows, light could be found. But the city didn't know Chris. The media praised his sisters, the society pages splashed their names across glossy covers, yet his name rarely surfaced. If it did, it was always as the mysterious Williams' son, seen occasionally in the background. He liked it that way. He wanted anonymity. Until he met her. Gloria Adam was unlike anyone he had ever met. She wasn't the most dazzling woman at a gala, nor the loudest in a crowd. But her laughter, it was light like wind chimes on a breezy day. Her eyes held warmth, and when she smiled, Chris felt for the first time that he was seen not as a Williams, not as an heir, but as simply Chris. They had met at a small cafe near the university. He had been working part-time as a waiter that semester, balancing trays with a tired smile when she walked in. She had ordered coffee, teasing him about his clumsy attempt to balance 3 cups at once. Something about her tone had disarmed him, and they began talking. What started as casual exchanges grew into longer conversations, late-night walks, and eventually, a love neither of them could deny. Gloria loved him, or at least Chris believed she did. She never asked about his family, never probed into his past. She accepted the version of him he showed her. A poor student, struggling, working odd jobs to survive. For Chris, it was proof of her sincerity. If she could love him without knowing his wealth, then perhaps she truly loved him. But there was one obstacle: her family. Mr. Adam, Gloria's father, was a man of ambition and pride. He had built his fortune from scratch, climbing through ruthless deals and calculated marriages. For him, family was not just love, it was strategy. Every union was a partnership, every child a legacy piece to be positioned on the board of power. He didn't approve of Chris from the start. A poor waiter still in school without a visible future? It was unacceptable. His daughter was meant for greater things, meant to marry into a family that could match their wealth and extend their reach. Lawrence, Gloria's elder brother, mirrored his father's arrogance. He saw Chris as dirt beneath their shoes. Whenever they crossed paths, Lawrence wasted no time mocking his poverty, calling him names, reminding him that he wasn't their class. And then there was Johnson, the chosen suitor. Handsome, rich, the son of another wealthy family. Mr. Adam adored him, and Lawrence considered him a brother. Johnson carried himself like a man who knew the world was his for the taking. From the moment he met Chris, he looked at him not as a rival, but as a nuisance to be swatted away. It was at the Adams family's dinner table that Chris felt the full weight of their disdain. 2 weeks before Gloria was to leave for her studies abroad, Mr. Adam had invited Chris for dinner. Chris had been nervous but hopeful. He had even bought a ring, a modest one, saving every bit from his jobs. His heart raced at the thought of proposing that night. He wanted Gloria to know his seriousness. The dinner began politely enough. Gloria was radiant in a blue dress, her eyes flickering with silent encouragement toward him. But the atmosphere quickly soured. "So, Chris," Mr. Adam began, swirling his wine, "tell us again, what exactly do you do for a living? Waiting tables? Delivering parcels?" Lawrence smirked. "Maybe he'll serve the dessert tonight himself. Might as well earn a tip." Johnson chuckled, leaning back with arrogant ease. "It's admirable, really. Some people are just destined to serve." Chris' cheeks burned, his hand tightening around the velvet box in his pocket. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, but Gloria placed her hand over his beneath the table. Her eyes said not tonight. So he swallowed his pride, forcing a smile, though inside he was breaking. He wanted to shout the truth, that he was the heir of Williams, that their wealth was nothing compared to his. But he couldn't. If he revealed himself now, how would he know Gloria's love was true? When dessert was served, his courage faltered. The ring stayed in his pocket. His dream of proposing vanished under the weight of their laughter. A few days later, Mr. Adam invited Chris to a coffee shop. The meeting was quiet, almost too civil. "Chris," Mr. Adam said, leaning forward, his voice calm but firm, "you need to leave my daughter alone." Chris' jaw clenched. "With respect, sir, Gloria and I love each other. We'll face whatever comes." Mr. Adam chuckled, shaking his head. "Love? Do you think love pays bills? Do you think love builds empires? My daughter is not meant to waste her life with a man who cannot even finish college properly. She is leaving to study abroad. Did she tell you that?" Chris froze. His chest tightened. "Abroad? No, she didn't mention it." Mr. Adam's eyes narrowed. "Exactly. If she truly loved you, wouldn't she have told you? Think, boy. You are nothing but a phase in her life. Let her go." The words cut deep. For the first time, doubt seeped into Chris' heart. Could it be true? Could Gloria be hiding things from him? He left the coffee shop in a storm of confusion, heading straight to Gloria's home. She opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. "Chris? What's wrong? Is it true?" His voice trembled. "Are you leaving? Are you going abroad?" Gloria's eyes softened with guilt. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Chris, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you, but you didn't," he said, pain cracking his words. She reached for his hand. "I didn't want to hurt you. It's only for a few years. We can make it work." He wanted to believe her. He wanted to hold on to her promise. Against all reason, he nodded, swallowing the storm inside him. "When you come back," he whispered, "I'll be here. I'll wait." That night, Chris sat alone in his apartment, staring at the ring that never left his pocket. He held it tight, whispering into the silence. 4 years, Gloria. I'll wait. No matter what they say, no matter what happens, I'll wait. And thus began the vow that would shape his life, the vow that would test his patience, his love, and his heart. Little did he know, the road ahead would be paved with betrayal, heartbreak, and a revelation that would shake the very foundations of the Adams and Johnson families. For Chris Williams was not just any man. He was the hidden prince of the city. And one day the world would know his name. The first year without Gloria was the hardest. Chris found himself walking the streets of the city as though searching for her shadow in every corner. The cafes where they had laughed, the gardens where they had walked, even the bus stops where she once teased him for being late, all became haunted places. He carried her absence like a wound that refused to heal. Every night, in the silence of his modest apartment, he would open his drawer and stare at the ring that had never left its box. He could still imagine sliding it onto her finger, the look in her eyes, the promises they had whispered. But now it was just a symbol of waiting. Waiting that stretched into days. Days that bled into weeks. And weeks that clawed their way into years. Gloria kept her word. Letters came in, sometimes short, sometimes long, filled with details of her studies abroad. She spoke of the campus, the friends she made, the cold winters she endured, and the exams that kept her awake. At the bottom of every page she signed with love, adding words of encouragement. Don't lose hope, Chris. One day we'll be together again. I love you more than distance itself. Chris read each letter until the ink began to fade. He answered faithfully, pouring his heart onto the pages, though never speaking of his struggles in detail. He didn't tell her about the long nights working 2 jobs, about skipping meals to save money, about the exhaustion that nearly broke his body. He wanted her to believe he was strong, steady, unshaken. But what she never knew was that tucked inside her tuition fees, her living costs, her small comforts, all of them came from Chris. Every semester when bills arrived, Chris found a way to cover them. He worked, he borrowed, he sacrificed. Gloria thought the money came from her father, but often, it was Chris who wired it quietly, anonymously, ensuring she lacked nothing. He never told her. He didn't want gratitude. He only wanted her to succeed, to come back to him proud, ready to start the life they had promised each other. In those years, something else was born, not just patience but vision. Chris began sketching late at night. Bottles, formulas, distribution chains. He studied tirelessly, driven by both his degree in pharmacology and his desire to merge knowledge with business. His small room became a laboratory of dreams, filled with scribbled notes, chemistry kits, and textbooks stacked high. The name was simple yet sacred, Chris Glow Pharmacy. It was their name. His and hers. A fusion of love and ambition. I'll build this for us, he whispered into the dark, holding the draft logo in his hands. And when you return, it'll be our future. With the quiet help of Grace, his youngest sister, who never questioned his choices, Chris secured a small loan under the table. He rented a humble office, nothing more than 2 rooms and a desk. He began developing supplements, medicines, and over-the-counter remedies. It was small, fragile. Nothing compared to the towering companies his family controlled. But it was his. Slowly the company grew. Street pharmacists began stocking his products. Local clinics started calling. By the 2nd year, Chris Glow had a name in the underground market. By the 3rd year, it began appearing in small pharmacies across the city. Chris worked like a man possessed. Every deal he made, every product he pushed, every sleepless night, he saw Gloria's face in all of it. She was the fuel that burned in his veins. Yet the silence between them grew heavier with time. Though letters came, they grew shorter. Sometimes weeks passed without a word. When Gloria finally wrote, she spoke more of her ambitions, her projects, the people she met. She mentioned friends often, professors occasionally, and sometimes, just sometimes, other names. Johnson's name appeared once in a passing comment about business connections abroad. Chris froze when he read it, staring at the ink until his eyes blurred. A shadow of doubt crept in, but he pushed it aside. No, she loves me, she promised. Still, late at night, doubt whispered like a cruel ghost. What if her family was right? What if she realized there was more to life than a poor man's dreams? What if distance wasn't just miles, but a slow unraveling of love itself? Chris shook those thoughts away and drowned himself in work. It was the only way to stay sane. But the Adams family never forgot him. Lawrence, Gloria's brother, often ran into Chris in the city. Every time he hurled words designed to wound. Still serving tables, Chris? Or did you finally graduate from carrying trays to scrubbing toilets? One day in a crowded cafe, Lawrence laughed loud enough for the room to hear. Do you know where my sister is right now? Studying abroad, surrounded by real men, successful men. And you're here still pretending to be something you're not. She'll never come back to you, Chris. Never. Chris clenched his fists but said nothing. He had learned to master silence, to let their mockery bounce off him like stones against steel. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that with each insult his resolve hardened. "I'll prove them wrong," he whispered into the night. "When she comes back I'll be ready." Through it all, his sisters stood by him even when they didn't fully understand. Anna often scolded him. "Chris, you're wasting time. You have an empire waiting for you, a seat at the table of kings. Why keep hiding? Why bleed for people who spit on you?" Miriam, sharper and more ruthless, added, "They laugh at you now, but the day you rise, crush them. Don't show mercy." Grace, the gentle one, simply smiled and placed a hand on his arm. "Follow your heart, Chris. If this is the path you've chosen, then I believe in you. But promise me one thing, don't lose yourself in the process." Chris nodded, grateful. Without them, perhaps he would have crumbled. But with their support he kept going. By the 4th year, Chris Glow had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Small clinics now signed contracts with him. Distributors whispered his name in backrooms, calling him the silent storm of the pharmaceutical market. Yet in all his success, loneliness persisted. The ring still sat in his drawer, untouched, waiting. The documents naming Gloria as 50% co-owner of Chris Glow lay in his safe, ready to be revealed the moment she returned. He dreamed of that day often. She would walk into his office, surprised. He would hand her the papers, her eyes wide with shock, her heart swelling with pride. They would embrace and the years of waiting would melt away. But deep inside, a quieter voice spoke. A voice Chris tried to ignore. What if she doesn't want this? What if she has changed? What if you've been waiting for a ghost? He silenced those doubts with work, with sweat, with blind faith. But the questions remained, festering, waiting for the day of reckoning. On the eve of Gloria's return, Chris sat alone in his office, staring at the framed logo of Chris Glow Pharmacy. His fingers traced the letters softly. "Tomorrow," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Tomorrow you come back. And I'll show you everything I've built. Everything I've sacrificed. Tomorrow our story begins again." He closed his eyes and imagined her face, her smile, her laugh. For a moment, hope drowned out the doubt and his heart lifted. But fate was not kind. Tomorrow would not bring the reunion he dreamed of. Tomorrow would bring heartbreak and the shattering of illusions. Chris had waited 4 years for Gloria. 4 years of sacrifice, of love unbroken. But when the curtain rose and she finally stood before him again, it would not be as the woman who kept her promise, but as the woman who broke it. The day Gloria returned was one Chris had marked in his heart long before the world knew. For 4 years he had lived for this moment. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every coin earned and every tear hidden behind his smile had been tied to the promise of seeing her again. Yet, when news finally reached him, it wasn't from her lips. It was through whispers in the city, banners stretched across the Adams estate, and the glittering announcement that the Adams family was hosting a grand welcome party for their daughter, an event open only to the city's elite. Gloria never told him. Not in her last letter. Not in any message. Not even a single word. And that silence hurt more than the distance ever did. On the evening of the party, Chris stood outside the sprawling hall draped in golden lights. Cars lined the streets, sleek black limousines, polished Bentley, the kind of machines reserved for names that shook the economy. Cameramen hovered near the entrance, snapping pictures of wealthy guests dressed in jewels and silks. Chris wore a simple black suit. His tie was modest, his shoes polished but not new. In his hand he held a folder, the future he wanted to give Gloria. Inside lay the incorporation documents of Chris Glow Pharmacy, signed, stamped, ready. Half of the company bore her name. Half of it was hers. He whispered to himself as he stared at the glowing building. Tonight she'll know. Tonight everything changes. But inside a storm raged. Would she be proud of him? Would she smile and embrace him? Would she cry, realizing he had carried her dream while she was away? Or would she look at him the way her family always did, with disdain, with that unspoken "you'll never be enough"? Chris inhaled deeply and stepped inside. The hall was drenched in opulence. Chandeliers hung like falling stars, scattering light across marble floors. Musicians played a soft string ensemble. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Every corner smelled of wealth, the perfume of people who had never known struggle. Chris slipped in quietly, unnoticed, standing in the far corner where the shadows embraced him. And then he saw her. Gloria stood at the center of the room, radiant. 4 years had shaped her into something even more breathtaking. Her dress flowed like liquid silver, her hair cascading in waves, her smile lighting the room. People gathered around her, drinking in her charm, applauding her speeches, laughing at her soft jokes. Chris' heart stuttered. She's more beautiful than I remembered. More than I deserve. He held the folder tighter, resisting the urge to rush forward. No, he would wait. He would give her time. When the moment was right, he would show her everything. As the evening deepened, Mr. Adam tapped his glass, silencing the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice proud, "tonight we welcome back my daughter, Gloria Adam. She has returned from her studies abroad, accomplished, refined, and ready to step into the life she was destined for." Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Gloria stepped forward, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, Father," she said, her voice soft but carrying. "And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. These past 4 years have been a journey, full of lessons, challenges, and growth. But through it all, I have never been alone. There has been someone who stood by me, supported me, believed in me even when times were hard." Chris' heart pounded. His eyes burned. This is it. She was going to say his name. Finally, after years of silence, she would acknowledge him before the world. Chris straightened his shoulders, pride swelling inside him. Guests turned their heads, curious who she would honor. He could feel their eyes beginning to drift toward him. And then she spoke. "That person is—" Gloria paused, smiling as she stretched her hand. "Johnson." The hall erupted in applause. Chris froze. Johnson stepped forward, dashing in a navy suit, smirking as though the world itself belonged to him. He walked past Chris without a glance, joined Gloria at the center, and the two shared a kiss. The sound of clapping filled the air, but in Chris' ears it was thunder, cruel and mocking. Chris' vision blurred. The folder in his hand shook violently. His chest felt as though iron chains were tightening around it. No, this isn't real. She wouldn't. But it was real. Too real. As the applause died down, Gloria's eyes found his in the crowd. She stepped down from the stage, her heels clicking against marble, her silver dress brushing lightly with each step. She stopped in front of him, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "Chris, I'm sorry," she whispered. Chris could barely breathe. "Sorry?" "You've always been good to me," she continued, her eyes flickering with guilt. "But I can't keep hiding. I can't live the kind of life you want for us. The gap between us, it's too wide. Johnson can give me the future I need. The life I dream of." Each word was a dagger. Chris wanted to scream, to tell her of the nights he starved so she wouldn't, the hours he spent building an empire in her name, the money he sent so she could stand here in this dress, smiling. Instead, his hand moved on its own. He opened the folder, pulled out the documents, and let his voice carry, steady but trembling. "I built this for us," he said. "Chris Glow Pharmacy. Our company. Our dream. I wanted to give you half of everything I own." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gloria's face paled. Johnson's smirk faltered. Mr. Adams' brows furrowed in confusion. But Chris' voice hardened. "And yet, it seems I was building a dream for two people while the other was dreaming with someone else." With one swift motion, he tore the documents in half. The sound echoed in the silent hall like thunder. Papers fluttered to the ground, scattered like broken promises. Chris dropped the pieces at Gloria's feet, turned and walked out. Outside, the night air hit him like a slap. His chest heaved, his steps staggered. Behind him, the laughter and music of the party continued as though nothing had shattered. But inside him, everything had died. He walked aimlessly through empty streets, his mind replaying the moment over and over, the kiss, the words, the humiliation. He had given her everything, and in return she had given his heart to another. By the time he reached his office, dawn was breaking. Chris collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. The documents he had guarded for years, the company he had built for love, all gone in an instant. He whispered into the silence, his voice breaking. For years, Gloria. And this is what I waited for." Tears streamed down his face, the first he had allowed himself in years. And when the sun finally rose, painting the city in gold, Chris vowed something to himself. "No more waiting. No more begging. From this day I rise for me. Not for you." The week after Gloria's betrayal was a blur. Chris buried himself in work, not because he loved it, but because it was the only way to keep from drowning in grief. The nights were the worst. Every corner of his apartment echoed with her absence. Every sound, the tick of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, reminded him that she was gone. But beneath the sorrow, something had begun to grow. Something hard. Something cold. something that whispered, "Rise." 3 months later, on a crisp Monday morning, Chris walked into the headquarters of Chris Glow Pharmacy. It was no longer a small office. Over the years, it had grown into a sprawling building, 4 stories of glass and steel, humming with employees who moved with quiet respect for the man who built it. The receptionist stood when she saw him. "Good morning, Mr. Chris." Chris nodded, his steps purposeful, his face calm. Inside, though, his heart was still a battlefield. By noon, his secretary, a sharp woman named Miss Helen, entered his office. Her voice was cautious. "Sir, the Adams and Johnson families are here. They have an appointment with the board." Chris froze. "What?" "Yes, sir. They came to finalize the distribution deal." "I thought you had approved." "He hadn't. He never would have." But in his absence, his managers had tried to push forward, not realizing the storm they were inviting into his house. Chris inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "Let them wait. I'll attend personally." When Chris entered the boardroom, silence fell. Mr. Adams sat stiffly at the table, his expensive suit gleaming under the lights. Beside him, Lawrence lounged smugly, tapping his pen against the desk. And at the far end, Johnson smirked, his arm draped casually over the chair. Gloria was not there. Chris walked to the head of the table, his presence commanding though his steps were quiet. He placed a folder on the table, then met each man's eyes in turn. "Gentlemen," he said evenly, "to what do I owe this visit?" Johnson chuckled. "You owe us nothing, waiter. We're here for business. Big men talk business. You fetch drinks." Laughter rippled from Lawrence, sharp and cruel. Even Mr. Adam allowed himself a thin smile. Miss Helen, standing near the door, flinched, ready to protest. But Chris raised a hand slightly, stopping her. His calm was more terrifying than anger. "Interesting," Chris murmured, leaning back in his chair. "You came into my company to sign a deal, and you believe I'm a waiter?" Johnson scoffed. "This is not your company. You probably sweep the floors here. Where's your boss?" "We're waiting." Chris allowed the silence to stretch. Then, with deliberate slowness, he slid the folder across the table. Lawrence snatched it up, sneering. But as he flipped through the pages, his smile faltered. His eyes darted back to Chris, confusion dawning. The folder contained incorporation papers, financial records, shareholder agreements. Every page bore the same name at the top. Founder and CEO, Christopher Williams. Mr. Adam face paled. Johnson's smirk froze. The room grew thick with disbelief. Chris' voice was calm, steady, but it carried like thunder. "I am not a waiter. I am the man who built Chris Glow Pharmacy. This is my company. My empire. And you came here to beg for a seat at my table." Johnson rose, his voice rising with it. "This is a joke. You expect us to believe." "Enough," Chris cut him off, his voice sharp, final. For the first time, the boardroom saw not a quiet young man, but the steel hidden within him. He stood, towering now, his presence overwhelming. "For years you mocked me. You spat on me. You told me I would never be enough. But look around you. Whose walls are these? Whose employees fill these floors? Whose name signs every contract in this building?" He leaned forward, his gaze locked on Mr. Adam. "You said I was not worthy of your daughter. Perhaps you were right. But today you are not worthy of my business." Gasps filled the room. Johnson's jaw tightened, rage replacing arrogance. "You'll regret this. No one humiliates the Johnson." Chris smiled faintly. "You mistake truth for humiliation. Leave my office. Now." Miss Helen opened the door, her eyes gleaming with pride as security stepped in. The 3 men, once so powerful in their own worlds, now looked like schoolboys caught in disgrace. They were escorted out, their footsteps heavy, their pride shattered. That evening, Chris sat in his office, exhaustion pulling at him. The confrontation had been necessary, but it had also reawakened the ache in his chest. Gloria's absence in that meeting had burned as much as her betrayal. He stared at the city skyline through the window, wondering if he had truly won anything. The door burst open. "Chris." It was Anna. Behind her came Miriam and Grace, all 3 sisters entering like a storm of loyalty. "What happened?" Anna demanded, her eyes blazing. "We heard Johnson and the Adams tried to humiliate you again in your own company." Chris sighed, rubbing his temple. "It's done. I sent them out." Miriam smirked coldly. "Good. They deserve worse." Grace moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Chris, stop carrying this alone. We are your family. When they insult you, they insult all of us." Chris looked at them, his throat tightening. He had carried the burden of proving himself for so long, He had nearly forgotten what it felt like to be defended. "I just wanted to rise on my own," he whispered. "Without father's name. Without your shadows. Just me." Anna softened, her hand resting on his shoulder. "And you did, Chris. You've built something incredible. But now, it's time they know who you are. Not just Chris. Not just a pharmacist. But Christopher Williams, the heir of our family." Days later, Anna arranged a grand partnership ceremony. She rented a prestigious hall, decorated with banners bearing the Chris Glow name. The city's elite gathered, eager to witness the next chapter of the rising company. Chris stood at the edge of the stage, nervous but steady, his sisters flanking him like guardians. But before the signing could begin, whispers rippled through the crowd. Mr. Sampson, a wealthy investor, had announced he would not partner with Chris Glow. Instead, he intended to align with the Johnson. The insult was sharp, public, humiliating. For a moment, Chris felt the old sting of betrayal, the weight of being dismissed. But before he could respond, Anna seized the microphone. Her voice rang out like a clarion call. "This hall," she declared, "was paid for by the Williams family. It stands today for one purpose: to honor my brother, Christopher Williams, founder of Chris Glow and heir to the Williams empire. If Mr. Sampson chooses to align with betrayal and arrogance, so be it. But let it be known, from this moment, Sampson Group is blacklisted. Any company that deals with them will never stand with the Williams family again." The hall erupted in gasps. Cameras flashed. Businessmen exchanged frantic glances. Chris stared at his sister, stunned. She had done what he never dared, used the family name as a sword. Anna turned to him, her eyes blazing. "No more hiding, Chris. The world will know you now. And those who mocked you will bow." By the end of the night, Sampson Group was in shambles. Investors pulled out, terrified of losing ties to the Williams empire. The Johnsons raged, scrambling to salvage their reputation. The Adams family, caught in the backlash, began to feel the ripple of disgrace. And Chris, though still nursing the wound of Gloria betrayal, stood taller than ever. The city now whispered his name, not as a poor waiter, not as a hidden shadow, but as a man who built an empire from nothing. Yet, deep inside, Chris knew the final reckoning was still to come. His father's birthday gala loomed, a night that would gather the entire elite world under one roof. And on that night, the truth of who he was would shake the city to its core. The city had never seen a party like it. 4 weeks, whispers spread through the elite circles. The Williams patriarch, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country, was hosting a gala unlike any other. It was to celebrate his 70th birthday. But beneath the glitter of the occasion, another truth flickered through rumors. He was preparing to name his heir. The anticipation was electric. Who would inherit the vast Williams empire? The elder daughters, already famed for their brilliance? Or someone else entirely? No one outside the family truly knew. And that mystery drew the entire elite world into one hall. The hall was a palace of light. Chandeliers spilled golden fire across polished floors. 100 tables glittered with crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and dishes prepared by the world's finest chefs. An orchestra played in the corner, filling the air with the kind of music only the powerful could afford. Politicians, tycoons, aristocrats, and celebrities filled the hall. Conversations hummed with speculation. At one table sat the Adams family, Mr. Adam in his finest suit, Lawrence already boasting loudly, and Gloria in a dress that shimmered like betrayal. Beside them, the Johnsons lounged, their arrogance displayed in every gesture. They whispered among themselves, their eyes scanning the crowd, confident that tonight would once again prove Chris was a nobody. And then, the Williams family entered. Anna led, her presence regal, her gown trailing like a queen's banner. Miriam followed, sharp and commanding, her every step a declaration of power. Grace walked beside them, soft and radiant, the heart of the family. And finally, Chris. He wore a black suit tailored to perfection, his shoulders broad, his posture calm, his face unreadable. For the first time he did not stand in shadows. He walked in the light, flanked by his sisters like a general surrounded by his finest warriors. Gasps rippled through the hall. Whispers began. "Who is he? Is that Christopher? Impossible. I thought he was just a waiter." The Adams family stiffened. Johnson smirked faintly, though unease flickered in his eyes. Chris felt the weight of 100 stares, but his heart was steady now. He no longer walked for validation. He walked for truth. When the time came, the patriarch of the Williams family stepped onto the stage. His presence silenced the room. "Friends, allies, partners," he began, his deep voice resonating across the hall. Tonight, I thank you all for celebrating with me. 70 years of life, of building, of battles fought and won. But tonight is not only about me, it is about the future. The crowd leaned forward. My empire is vast. My legacy must endure. And so tonight I name my heir. The one who will carry the Williams name into the next century. He paused, letting suspense thicken. Eyes darted toward Anna, Miriam, Grace. Each of them could have been worthy. But then, the patriarch's eyes softened. And he extended his hand toward the young man standing quietly behind him. My heir, my only son. Christopher Williams. The hall erupted in shock. Gasps, shouts, whispers swirled like a storm. What? Chris? That poor boy. He's the heir. Mr. Adam's face turned ashen. Lawrence choked on his drink. Johnson's smirk shattered, his eyes wide with disbelief. Gloria's glass slipped from her hand, shattering onto the marble floor. Chris stepped forward, the weight of years of humiliation finally lifting from his shoulders. He took the microphone, his voice steady, calm, but sharp as steel. For years, he began, many of you have known me only by what you thought I was. A poor man. A waiter. A nobody. Some of you mocked me. Some of you spat on me. Some of you tried to destroy me. His eyes swept across the hall, pausing deliberately on the Adams table, then the Johnson. Silence pressed against every wall. But I thank God, Chris continued, his voice breaking slightly before regaining its strength, that I never revealed my truth then, because it allowed me to see the truth of others. It showed me their greed, their cruelty, their arrogance. It showed me who was real, and who was never worthy of walking beside me. Gloria stood abruptly, her face pale, her voice trembling. Chris, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know who you were? Chris turned his gaze to her, and for the first time, his eyes carried no longing, only clarity. Because if I had, Gloria, I would never have known who you truly are. Her lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes. But Chris' voice cut like finality. You didn't need wealth to betray me. You only needed choice. And you chose. The hall buzzed with murmurs, every ear drinking in the moment. Chris turned back to the microphone. His voice thundered now, filled with authority that shook the air. As of tonight, every deal with the Adams family is cancelled. Every contract with the Johnsons is void. And to every company in this room, know this, anyone who dares to work with them will be cut off from the Williams empire. Forever. Gasp. Shouts. The sound of collapsing reputations. Mr. Adams slumped in his chair, face buried in his hands. Lawrence stood, stuttering protests that no one listened to. Johnson cursed under his breath, already imagining the ruin of his family. The downfall had begun. Anna stepped forward, her voice like fire. The Williams family does not forget loyalty, or betrayal. Let this be a lesson to all. Arrogance is a crown that always crumbles. Miriam added coldly, those who mocked my brother will remember this night as the day their names burned to ash. Grace, her eyes glistening, simply whispered into the microphone, and those who stood with him will rise with us. The hall roared with applause, a tide of approval, fear, and awe. As the gala ended, Chris stood by the balcony overlooking the city lights. For the first time in years he felt free. No more hiding. No more waiting. No more chains of unworthiness. His father came beside him, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. I am proud of you, son. You built yourself before inheriting mine. That is what makes you worthy. Chris' chest tightened with emotion. For years he had sought validation from the wrong places. Tonight he finally understood where it truly lay. Behind him, his sisters laughed together, their bond stronger than ever. Businessmen lined up, desperate now to shake his hand. The same mouths that had mocked him now spoke his name with reverence. And Gloria? She stood in the corner, tears streaming silently as Johnson turned his back on her in fury. She had lost everything, not because Chris had hidden who he was, but because she had revealed who she was. Chris turned away from her, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The future stretched before him, vast and bright. Chris Glow Pharmacy. The Williams Empire. His own name. He was no longer the boy mocked as a poor waiter. He was Christopher Williams, the heir, the builder, the man who rose from the ashes of betrayal into the fire of destiny. And this time, nothing could bring him down. Core moral lessons in your story. 1. True love is proven in hardship, not in comfort. Gloria claimed to love Chris when she believed he was poor, but the moment wealth and status came into play, she abandoned him. Real love doesn't disappear when life gets difficult. It grows stronger. 2. Humility protects, arrogance destroys. The Adams and Johnson families were blinded by their pride. They mocked Chris, believing wealth was everything. Their arrogance became their downfall, while Chris' humility and patience became his greatest strength. 3. Your worth is not defined by what others see. Chris was despised because people thought he was poor. But he knew his own worth even when the world didn't. It teaches that you don't need to announce your value, time will always reveal it. 4. Betrayal reveals character. When Gloria chose Johnson over Chris, she exposed her true heart. Wealth and status cannot hide disloyalty. Betrayal doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you've been all along. 5. Family loyalty is priceless. Chris' sisters stood by him when others mocked him. In the end, it was their loyalty and unity that secured his victory. Blood may be tested, but true family stands unshaken. 6. Build yourself before inheriting others. Chris didn't just wait for his father's wealth. He built Chris Glow Pharmacy with his own sweat. The moral is clear. True heirs don't live off inheritance alone, they prove themselves capable of carrying it forward. 7. Patience turns pain into power. Chris waited, endured humiliation and sacrificed for years. In the end, his patience brought him to a position of strength where the truth spoke louder than revenge. Final moral. Never let rejection define you. Stay humble, stay focused, and let your success answer those who doubted you. In the end, truth always rises, betrayal always collapses, and love that is real will never abandon you. Please subscribe, like, and comment. Give me your review on this story. Shalom.